One of the techniques that I'm going to demonstrate in the next couple of minutes is something called pre-shading. Aeroplanes are made up of lots of panels, and these panels butt up against each other. The panels often get grit and grime and moisture that show up very subtly on the real aircraft. I like to try to replicate this by a technique called pre-shading, which means that I actually paint the panel lines black before I paint the camouflage colour on the aircraft. I find this technique gives me plenty of scope to come up with a fairly controllable effect at the end. So the compressor's on. As you can see, we're using the spray booth as well. I find it's handy to have a scrap of paper handy just to be able to test how the airbrush is going, make sure that the line is going to be fine enough so we can make sure that we're not using the aeroplane itself as a test bed. As you can see, with the fine line nozzle and the black paint, we can get some quite fine results, certainly a millimetre or two quite reliably. So let's start to paint the aeroplane itself. We don't have to be particularly subtle or accurate. What we're looking for is a general effect. So I roughly run along panel lines and major structural features around the edges of the gun pod here on the Hasegawa Messerschmitt 109, but mostly just roughly along panel lines so that we get a general impression. Doesn't have to be terribly thin. No great skills involved here, as you can see. And we continue to do this until the whole bottom of the fuselage, in this case, because we'll just add the 76 light blue colour after the black. I'm going to go inside the wheel wells as well, because in addition to pre-shading panels, this is a good technique to add fairly realistic looking shadows to the aeroplane as well. Now you can see it hasn't taken us terribly long, probably only 5 minutes or so, to completely pre-shade the bottom of this model. What we need to do now, though, is reload the airbrush with the polyscale RLM 76 light blue, because this is a German aircraft. In fact, it's Hasegawa's 1/32 scale Messerschmitt Bf 109, and now we have to apply the camouflage colour in order to hide most of this pre-shading coat. So let's start by colouring the panels. It's just like filling in the spaces between the panels that we've pre-shaded. Very much like this. So I generally just outline the square and start to fill in between. The same with here, where we've got very small access hatches. I'll detail those in and I'll actually spray around them and then go around the outline of the panel shortly after that. On the wingtip we do the same thing. I just run a fairly hard line along the pre-shaded panel and once again fill in the blank spaces there. Same deal on the aileron and on the flap. And I'll continue this whole process. We've got another couple of little hatches here, so we'll just spray around those like so. Until we have what is a fairly stark light and dark effect on the bottom of the wing here. Now some people actually like to have a stark effect, probably not quite as stark as this, but I prefer to tone down the finish considerably. And the way that we can do that, once we've done our basic colouring in, is to do a broad overspray. Can you see, as I'm spraying the light colour over the top, it's making the effect gradually more subtle until the panel lines almost disappear. You'll have to get in and detail a little bit where the dark paint still looks too heavy. A little bit of fine work. but then another overspray, and what we wind up with is an effect that doesn't look like black painted lines, but just looks like some general weathering on an overall colour, and that's really the effect that we're looking for. You can see how that effect is starting to become a little bit more realistic on the outer wing. It's also worth just pointing out the technique once again with the double action airbrush. You'll notice that I press down to get the air, and when I want to have more paint, I pull back on the trigger. So I'm just going to repeat this technique of filling in panels, and the same goes for inside the wheel well. I'll actually go around the structural detail with the airbrush, and then I'll overspray. I won't actually spray those sides very heavily inside the wheel well because they'd be natural shadow areas anyway, so I'll leave those quite dark. But we'll go over the radiator flap, and eventually we'll go back along the fuselage as well until the whole aircraft is covered. And here is the final result. Our Hasegawa 32nd scale Messerschmitt Bf109 G6 with the panel lines pre-shaded in black and oversprayed in polyscale acrylic RLM76 light blue. We'll be following the painting progress of this model over the next few installments. Next time we'll be looking at the upper surfaces and exploring some different techniques for masking. Well, that's all for this time from Testor ScaleWorkshop. Bye for now.